Hold your breath.
The arts are organized expression of ideas, the feelings and experiences in images, in music, in language, and gesture, and in movement. The arts in education enables the child to explore alternative ways of communicating with others. It encourages ideas that are personal and inventive, that makes a vital contribution to the development of a range intelligences. It emphasizes the creative process and so ensure that the child's work are personal and has quality. So, arts in education is an integral to primary education in helping to promote thinking, imagination, and sensitivity. And arts activities can be focused for social and cultural development and enjoyment in school. So, these activities and experiences help the child to make sense of the world, to question, to speculate, and to find solutions, to deal with feelings, and to respond, to create experience. Good day, everyone. I am Jenny Katoto, a second-year student of BS Edma. Today, I'll be discussing about artistic and creative literacy. But before that, let me present my topic outline. So these are my topic outlines. First is the definition of terms. The 8 benefits of arts according to Elliot W. Eisner. The characteristics of an artistically literate individual. And lastly, the issue in teaching creativity. What is artistic and creative literacy? So, according to the National Coalition for Core Arts Standards, a conceptual framework for arts learning 2014 defined that artistic literacy is the knowledge and understanding required to participate authentically in the arts. So while individuals can learn about dance, media, music, theater, and visual arts through reading print text, artistic literacy requires that they engage in artistic creation processes directly through the use of materials in specific spaces. So, artistic literacy is a human right and a teachable skills. It is the ability to connect both personally and meaningfully to the works of arts, and through this process to forge connections to our humanity and to the humanity of others. So, when we practice artistic literacy by exploring an artist's process, understanding artistic concepts, and learning skills within an artistic discipline, we inspire contemplation in the human experience, challenge our beliefs and perceptions, and cultivate our ability to revise what we think we know. So, we gain entrance to work of art that may have seemed inaccessible. We experience a sense of ownership and belonging. So, what is the importance of artistic and creative literacy in education? So, bringing creativity and literacy together can be a powerful tool in teaching. It allows children to be active in literacy, from acting out plays through characters that they have made themselves or through making props. It allows children to explore their imaginations. So the 8 benefits are the valuable lessons that education can learn from arts according to Elliot W. Eisner. So who is this remarkable man? Elliot W. Eisner is a visionary in the field of arts and education. He focused his academic research in the development of aesthetic intelligence and the uses of critical methods from the arts to improve educational practice. He is the author of more than 15 books and many articles. He has originally trained as a painter and designer. So, Elliot W. Eisner argues that the distinctive form of thinking needed to create artistically crafted work are relevant not only what students do. They are relevant to virtually all aspects of what we do, from the design of curricula to the practice of teaching to the features of the environment in which students and teachers live. So, based on these arguments, said Eisner, the notion that the value of the arts lies in their ability to help teach other subject is upside down. So instead, he said the rest of the core curriculum needs to make use of the teaching and learning approaches that address the same cognitive development that comes naturally and powerfully through a study of the arts. Nuance and surprise and relationship should be part of the learning platform for all subjects. So these 8 skills come to be valued and nurtured in other academic subjects. So Eisner believes that learning becomes a creative process and accomplishment, and these other subjects then takes on the character of the work of art. In summing up, Eisner advocates for a point of view expressed frequently through his address. Standardization of learning should not be the goal of schools. We should embrace the fact that there are differences in people in aptitude, interest, and proclivity. A good school increases variance among students and elevates the means in the process. So these are the 8 benefits according to Elliot Eisner. So first is education can learn from the arts that forms and content cannot be separated. How something is said or done shapes the content of the experience. So it has long been held that form and content are distinct phenomena, and that one can modify the form of an object or event without changing its content. So I argue that content and form coexist and must, of necessity, define each other. To change the form of a form is to change the quality of experience that it makes possible. So the quality of experience that a form makes possible is what the content of the form is. So what does this mean for education? It means it serves as a reminder that how something is taught and how curricula are organized, how schools are designed, impacts what students will learn. These side effects may be real main effects of the practice. So number 2, the education can learn from the arts that everything interacts. There is no content without form and no form without content. So the point of this idea pedagogically is to acknowledge what when we form is changed is an object or an event. So the quality of life is it engenders. So when the content of a form is changed, the form altered. Form and content are like 2 sides of a coin. One cannot have one without the other. So there are no separate parts in a whole. For example, a color looks like depends upon the color around it. The same is true. The same is true in teaching. We call this interaction. The concept of interaction is as fundamental in education as it is in all human states of affairs. So what is large and what is small depends upon what one is comparing it to. So what is hard and what is soft depends on the hardness of the hard and the softness of the soft. Soft can be hard in some contexts, and can be soft in others. So this is because interaction is a condition of experience. So in teaching, whether a teacher is considered to move swiftly or slowly depends only upon the teacher's rate of speech, but also on what the students bring to the education. So for some students, swift is slow, and for others, slow and swift. It is the characters of the interaction that defines our experience. So number 3 is the education can learn from the arts that no one's matters. To the extent to which teaching is an art, attention to the nuance is critical. It has been said that the devil lives in the details. It can also be said that the aesthetic lives in the nuance that the maker can shape in the course of creation. How a word is spoken, how a gesture is made, how a line is written, and how a melody is played all affect the character of the whole, and all depend upon the modulation of the nuances that constitute the act. Musicians live in their nuances. There are dozens of ways to play a pizzicato on a violin, but what any particular violinist Thus, what the pizzicato depends on what he or she does with the nuance that constitute his rendition of the music. So number 4, education can learn from the arts that surprise is not to be seen as intruder in the process of inquiry, but as a part of the rewards and reaps when working artistically. In our technically oriented control focused society, we tend to regard surprise as an inability to predict. It is but surprise is in the course of work is also the result of securing a new insight, one that has either to an unexpectedly. No surprise, no discovery, no discovery, no progress. Educators should not resist surprise but create the condition to make it happen. It is one of the most powerful sources of intrinsic satisfaction. 5 is education can learn from the arts that slowing down perception is the most promising way to see what is actually there. So it is true that we have certain words to designate high levels of intelligence. We describe something as swift or bright or sharp or fast on the pickup. Speed in its swift state is a descriptor of those we call smart. Such folks as are a quick read, yet I would argue that one of the qualities we ought to be promoting in our schools is a slowing down of perception, the ability to take one's time to smell the flowers, to really perceive in the Deweyan sense, and not merely recognize what one looks at. Recognition, by contrast, Dewey pointed out, is about attaching a label to an object or event. This is an automobile, that is wagon, that this is an elm tree, that is the pine. The task of recognition has to do with the classification and assignment of the label that stands for the event. Much of early reading instruction is of this type. What perception entails is not so much classification or categorization, but a savoring, a quality exploration of a variety of qualities that constitute the qualitative wholeness of the object or event being perceived. So Dewey argue his that learning how to slow down perception is one of the primary way in which one can enrich one's experience. For slow down perception to become a habitual attitude will require a cultural change. I do not know whether we are ready for such change. I do not know much of humans' experience is dissipated or weekly experience because of the absence of time that need to be taken in order to really see. So 6 is education can learn from the arts that the limits of language are not the limits of cognition. We know more than we can tell in common parlance. Literacy refers essentially to the ability to read and to write, but literacy could be reconceptualized, and I propose to do so, as the creation and use of the forms and representation that will enable ones to create meaning that will take the impress of language in its conventionally form. In addition, literacy is associated with high-level forms of cognition. We tend to think that in order to know, you have to be able to say. I would argue that the limits of language in no way define the limits of cognition. As it reminds to us, we know more than we can tell. The implication of that idea are profound for education. If taken seriously, it would expand our conception of what knowing entails. It would recognize the diverse way in which people can be literate, or should I say multiliterate. Language used in the service of the poetic is quite different than language used in the service of the literal. One can be literate in form and illiterate in the other. What school needs to attend to are the cultivation of literacy in its many forms. Each forms of literacy provides another way to be in the world, another way to form experience, another way to recover and express meaning. So number 7, education can learn from the arts that somatic experience is one of the most important indicators that someone has gotten it right. Related to the multiple ways in which we represent the world through our multiple forms of literacy. is a way in which we come to know the world through the entailment of our body and world itself. Sometimes one knows a process or an event through one's skins. So as Hussein Langer once commented, the senses are first avenues to consciousness. There is nothing in the head that was not first in the hand. So somatic experience is body knowledge, a sense of rightness of faith, an ability to discriminate without being able to articulate the conditions that made it possible. The body knows and forms the basis of intuition to require the logical description or the logical argument for a claim about the states of affairs is to expel the poetic form from what we can know. The evidence for what we know almost always persuades and expands to more than what one can say about it. So lastly is education can learn from the arts that open-ended task permits the exercise of imagination, and the exercise of imagination is one of the important of human aptitude. It is the imagination, not necessity, that is the mother of invention. Imagination is the source of new possibilities. In the arts, imagination is the primary virtue. So it should be in the teaching of mathematics, in all the sciences, in the history, and indeed in virtually all the human create. These achievements would require for its realization a culture of schooling in which the imaginative aspects of the human condition were made possible. We ought to be helping our students discover new seas upon which to sail rather than to old ports at which to dock. We need schools whose tasks are sufficiently open-ended to allow students to place their thumbprint upon their works without a sense of redundancy. It's an ambitious aim I am after, but one of the I think is critical in the long run for the well-being of a planet. Artistically literate students. So use a variety of artistic media, symbols, and metaphors to communicate their own ideas and to respond to the artistic communication of others. They develop creative personal realization in at least one art form in which they continue actively involvement as an adult. They cultivate culture, history, and other connection through diverse forms and genres of artwork. Find joy, inspiration, intellectual stimulation, and meaning when they participate in the arts. They seek artistic experiences and support the arts in their communities. Issues in teaching creativity. So the art function as modes of the communication. Creating ideas are expressed through visual image, sounds, movements, and dramas, and with assistance of technology, are presented in the various form in the electronic media. While humans usually communicate verbally, they also use the art to express their feelings. On the other hand, body language, vocal inflection, and graphic representation can enhance verbal interaction embedded within the arts form itself. So, who is Ken Robinson? Our task is to educate our students' whole being so they can face the future. We may not see the future, but they will, and our job is to help them make something of it. In his famous TED Talks on creativity and innovation entitled Do Schools Kill Creativity and How to Escape Education's Death Valley, he stressed paradigms in the education system that hamper the development of creative capacity among learners. He reiterated the hierarchy of system. Firstly, most useful subjects such as mathematics and language for works and the tops, while arts are at the bottom. Secondly, academic ability has come to dominate our view of intelligence. Curriculum, competence, classroom experience, and assessment are geared toward the development of academic ability. So, challenges faced by educator. Educate the well-off of learnings. and shift from the conventional learnings towards academic ability alone. Give equal weight to the arts, the humanities, and to physical education. Facilitates learning and work towards stimulating curiosity among learners. Awakens and develop powers of creativity among learners. And
That could be all. Thank you.